Okay, good day. This is Mercedes. I'm recording this video as I sun gaze. I'm, I was meditating earlier today about the difference of whether or not there's a difference between purpose and a career. Because as I think back, we normally, well, when I was growing up, this was the orientation when I was in my youth ministry. And certainly at the time, it was really something good for us to have because it helped you to focus on, life and where you should be in life, where we should position ourselves. I'm not even sure if you're seeing the sun because I'm only guesstimating because the screen is very white. So, we were taught at the time that we must find the will of God for our lives. In other words, we must know, as I understand it now, will of God means God's desire, what God wants for you, and that's what we were taught. What does God really want for you as a young person? Specifically, where does he want to fit you? Where should you position yourself in life in terms of career, in terms of marriage, things like that. But I was reading some research. I read some research recently that was done in North America about young people who seemed to have no purpose. Hey, how are you? Young people who seemed to have no purpose. They were the ones, if I remember correctly, who were, disjointed, not doing well in school, unfocused, things like that. Whereas young people who seemed to know what they wanted, who were more settled and stable, were the young persons who had been involved in the community, who had been giving, things like community service. They were active, they were participating, in the church and, the family, things like that. And so it brought me back as I mused and meditated on that out loud this morning earlier. I began to go back to the Garden of Eden where God gave Adam and Eve purpose. And I noted as I mused that God did not tell Adam about a career. Career and purpose to me seem to be different because purpose is your inherent, what is the word now that I should say? I don't want to reuse purpose. It's the reason that we are here on earth. And as I now begin to clarify the issue, our reason for being on earth is what God told Adam: to be fruitful, multiply, replenish the earth, and to have dominion over the earth. And then when we look at the example God gave through Adam now, he put Adam in the garden that was east of Eden and gave him the job to dress the garden, and dress was to till. So Adam, generically speaking, the principle is that Adam was a caretaker. Adam was somebody who looked after his environment. He had a task to take care of, to care for, to nurture, and that in turn would have taught him how to look after his family. So in my mind, one of the first things, if we are to extrapolate from the example that God left us through Adam and Eve, one of the first things that we should teach our children very early is how to look after their environment. I'm gonna pause. We need to teach our children very early how to look after their environment as early as possible, how to keep their rooms clean, how to keep their homes clean, taking out the trash, taking up things, not dropping things around, for other people to pick up, taking care of the garden, taking care of animals. Even in my own experience growing up, we always had responsibilities. And I remember my brother's, one of his first chores was to take care of a sheep that we had. We used to call it Mei. And then as teenagers, we had different tasks in the home. We were supposed to keep, wash the waste, things like that. The parents are not supposed to be working like slaves, and kids are in your houses with your kids like kings and queens. That is, God never left that example for us, and certainly we must not permit our kids to feel that Daddy and mommy are the slaves and we are the kings and queens here, and we do anything we want, and they slave while we just loll about, because that is not what their purpose is. They are given tasks to caretake. And the second thing, so you could think about all the things that go into gardening, so maybe get your child a little plot of soil in your place, or a little pot, and let them learn to garden. That way your child learns to take care of things. Your boys learn now how to take care of a family. They move from the animal to the family. So get them little pets, parakeets, animals, whatever your tolerance is, whatever you can manage, whatever you can afford. Give them chores. Make a chore timetable, and every child should have a chore. Do not pay them to do chores. It's their duty to do chores. I mean, like, you working minding your kid, why should your kid be paid to do chores? Anyway, the other thing is that God, so purpose, he was to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. So you see, fruitfulness, productivity of any kind. So as early as possible, we should be getting our kids into things that they can do with their hands, Very, very early I learned to, my mother gave me a little book, a crochet book. She gave me a pin. She gave me thread. So very early I learned to crochet. I still can crochet, but crochet takes a lot of time. So there are different things you can do, put things around your house. You don't have to be rich. Just be creative. Just think, how can I help my child to be fruitful? Fruitfulness means they're bringing forth something, they're producing something. Maybe all you might be, maybe it might be art. Get them, book art, easels, get them, pencils and crayons, and there's so much on YouTube now. You could go on YouTube, create a playlist on how to draw, create a playlist on how to play an instrument. It's not all that expensive to buy things like keyboards and guitars, flutes and trombones and so forth. Get your child into something creative that they can feel. It helps to build their self-esteem, and this could also be something by which they can make money with later in life. Art, music, the arts. And if you look back at Israel, one of the things God gave them after they came out of Egypt was art. And then he told them multiply, so that's the reproductivity, and replenish the earth, fill up the earth and have dominion. So all humans are supposed to be ruling in the earth in some way. We're supposed to manage things. So give your child little tasks to manage. Train them very early how to organize, how to plan things, how to take care of their finances, how to manage resources, etc. Because when they can micromanage, they can macromanage a corporation, they can macromanage a school, they can macromanage a church. There are some things that would come to you. When I was a child, I used to look after my siblings. My mother did not ask me to do that. But God put a spirit in me one day. She, was out at work, working shifts and so forth. I'd look after them, cook meals and things like that, clean the house, things like that. So you develop a sense of independence, a sense of leadership in your child when you train them to manage something. Manage. You just have to be creative and sit and say, this is my child's purpose in the earth, to be fruitful, multiply, replenish, and to have dominion. How can I help my child to achieve all of these things in their purpose in the earth? So you get them involved. When I was a child, I used to have to take bread to an old lady, and I used to unfortunately pinch off pieces of the bread. And thank you, Jeff Morgan, for telling Mommy, because Mommy beat me and she told me never do that again. So my philanthropy, I was a greedy philanthropist. So, yes, going out in the community, so involvement, even in the church, the young people should not be there just having programs. There should be something that has to do with outreach, because the research is showing that children who are actively involved in their community, who are actively involved in something in their environment have a greater sense of purpose, a greater sense of belonging, a greater sense of connectedness, a greater sense of identity than children who do not. And the other thing that God did now was to ask Adam to name things. And so he named animals. So how could we apply that now? I will have to, let's see, you can just giving the child a task of creativity. Creating things, so he had to create a name. He had to look at the animal, match the animal's personality with a name. And so if he said that was a cat, it was because it said meow, and it was, like to twine around your leg, and you know how cats behave. So Adam said that's a cat because. And so in the same way, we are to give the child, tasks to do that would draw on their creativity, so that they, let them do something new, create something new. If they're a musician, let them compose a piece, let them draw something new. Say, use your imagination, and think of something wonderful. Dream. Tell me what. For example, let's just be crazy. Let's say if the moon was a place on which we could live, what would you do up there? Would there be houses there? Would there be streets? Or tell them to imagine something in the future. Would the cars be flying? Things like that. You never know, you might create an inventor. So that is where the invention, children are inventors, and they have ways of inventing stories, they invent songs or create. So those are some of the ways in which we can get the child to name things. So in my mind, that is purpose, whereas now God, hello, how are you? God never told Adam he was a musician, he was a this. He never gave him a specific name, but he expected him to be fruitful. So he didn't say what fruit tree he was, he just said be fruitful. So anything that he could have done with his hands, that is what Adam was to do. I wonder if you can see the sun. So finally now, career in my mind is just a specific calling in a specific field, a specific discipline where we are to serve. But I believe that humans can be multi-dimensional in terms of their gifts, and that one person does not have to be stuck. For that matter, a career may not necessarily be where your gift is expressed, or your fruitfulness. Your career might be just an 8-to-4 job where you earn an income. I'm not saying it's useless. I have a career, thank God for the career, but I thank God that I'm fruitful, that I could sing, I could dance. I don't dance to choreographed dance, but I could dance. I thank God I could do a lot of things because, I have the desire and I have the same spirit that God gave Adam, and every human has that spirit. And, sometimes because of lack of resources, we are pressed in, and that is why those of us with resources must help those who do not have. And that is why God never intended for the resources of earth to be in the hands of a few, because the earth is given to the children of men and not an elite set of people. And God does not want this kind of, restriction of the resources of earth to a few film stars and a few, wonderful people that the rest of the people say are idols, quote unquote. So anyway, I just thought I'd share my thoughts and hope that this would help you. Bye bye. God bless.